G'day, welcome to Bradley's Bakehouse, where we're going to make the OG no-knead bread, Pane Di Casa. We're going to make a really simple white one, we're going to make a really overly complicated one, and we're going to make two little ones that we're going to fill with some really nice stuff. So for the plain Pane Di Casa that we're going to make, and also the one that we're going to fill a little bit later on, we're using Lighthouse's bread flour. This is about 11.9 grams of protein. It's very readily available, makes good bread. Using Lowen's instant dried yeast, very small amount. Got salt, brown sugar, and water. And that's it. Like always, exact measurements are down in the description below. So one of the really beautiful things about Pane Di Casa is that you need nothing. You don't need any equipment. You just need one reasonably sealable container, and that is it. All that we need to do is just combine all of our ingredients together. So in goes our flour, yeast, salt, brown sugar, all of it, please. We're just gonna stir that up a little bit just to get them mixed around. Just throw a bunch of flour everywhere, that's fine, whatever, it's all good. And then, we're just gonna make a well in the middle of this container. We're just gonna pour our water in. That's it. So this is about 70% hydration. So this is definitely not low hydration. It's getting towards high, I would say. People get pretty macho with the whole hydration thing. 70% I would say is getting towards high. I saw someone say that 70% was low. That's insane. And we're just gonna mix this up until no dry patches remain. Gonna dispense with the thing now and just give it a couple of squeezes with the bare hand. All we're really aiming for here is to just get all of the flour coated, just so it's in a position where it can sit and hydrate. Just so we don't have any dry patches left. That's all we're shooting for. Now that we've got this very shaggy mess in the container, I can tell you what we're not gonna do. We're not gonna fucking knead it. Pane Di Casa is a no-knead dough. What that means is that we're gonna let time and all the enzymes and the yeast and stuff like that do all of their work to establish a gluten matrix for us. Now, I use fridge cold water because I live in Queensland, Australia, and it is currently 24 degrees at 5:30 in the evening. So, I don't want that to get too warm. I want it to sit at room temperature, not creep above it. So, I use fridge cold water. Depending on your climate, you might have to go colder than that. This is gonna get one stretch and fold in about 8 hours, maybe, if I'm not feeling lazy, but that's it. See you in 16 hours. G'day gang, it's very early in the morning and I'm just about to leave for work, which is why you're getting me recording this in post. Our 3 Pane Di Casa doughs have been sitting out for about 8 hours or so now, and we're gonna give them a quick stretch and fold. A stretch and fold is kind of in the same vein as kneading techniques. It involves folding the dough on and over itself. What we're basically doing is taking the short strands of gluten and connecting them to other strands so they can lengthen. This is gonna create a stronger gluten matrix, which is gonna trap a lot of gas. It's also gonna redistribute the yeast's food supply, allowing the yeast to ferment nice and vigorously. Okay, I'll be back when it's not 3 in the morning. So exactly 1 8-hour shift later, it's been about 16, maybe 17 hours. We gave it one stretch and fold 8 hours in, and this dough, as you can see, it's now very risen, it's very aerated, it's very good to go. So over that 16 hours, what's happened is that like time and science has created us a gluten matrix. So this is very full and very puffed up now, and it looks like it's gonna be like a big gloopy mess, but once this is punched down a little bit, this is actually gonna be a really easy dough to handle, which is pretty strange for a 70% hydration dough. And it's gonna have quite a strong gluten matrix through the miracle of science. So we're just gonna take a little bit of flour. This is just a little bit of all-purpose. Just gonna sprinkle that on top. What we're gonna do is just a hand in, and we're just gonna degas it. So we've given it that stretch and fold, so we've established a bunch of like extra strength in there. And we're just gonna sort of pull this up. So we're sort of tucking the floured side like underneath, because the underneath side is gonna be really sticky. So once we've got that sort of position there, just gonna take a little bit of flour onto our bench. Just a little bit, not much. You don't want to introduce a ton of extra flour. And we're just gonna get that down there, just face down like that, so the sticky side is exposed. Now in terms of the shape that we want to put it in for this bench rest, we want it round and we want it smooth enough and we want it sealed, right? A little bit of extra fermentation is gonna happen there, but what's more important is that the gluten matrix that we've now just pissed off and disturbed is going to relax enough for us to shape into a batard. We've got this thing here. This side's quite sticky, as you can see. What we're gonna do, because the dough's gonna wanna stick to itself, and we've got this nice floured, nice, I can touch that, no problem, that's fine. That doesn't wanna stick to me at all. We're gonna take this bit, grabbing underneath the non-sticky side, and we're gonna pull that over, and we're gonna tuck it in, see how that's sticking there? And we're gonna do the same thing all the way around. It's kind of a bit like a stretch and fold, but yeah, sort of like in reverse. And then we're just gonna flip her over, and look at that. So that's not sticky. at all. We haven't used a whole heap of extra flour. We haven't used an unnecessary amount, is what I would say. Once we're gonna get there, we're just gonna tuck those edges under, and I would call that pre-shaped. So this is gonna sit here for about 20 minutes. During that time, we wanna cover it with something because we don't want this to dry out. For that, I'm just gonna take this is the container that I fermented this in, and chuck that over the top. And we're gonna let that sit for about 20 minutes, and then we're gonna come back and shape it. It's really important that you don't skip this step. If you try to shape dough before it's ready, you're gonna end up fighting it, and it's probably gonna win in the form of tearing and ruining a lot of your hard work. Okay, so our Pane Di Casa dough has been resting for about 20 minutes. It's gonna be nice and soft and malleable and like easy to work with. It's gonna be very supple. Let's go with that. It's gonna be very supple. So for shaping, we're gonna turn this one into a Vienna or a batard, you know, sort of like freestanding loaf shape, really good for sandwiches and stuff like that. So the first thing that we need to do is flip this guy over. So we've got that side nice and exposed. Grab a little bit of that extra flour there. We don't want to cover this thing in flour. We don't want to introduce a ton of extra flour. That is the last thing that we want to do. You'll dry out your dough and you won't be happy with your end product. So this thing is quite gassy. We want to be a little bit gentle with that. We want to preserve as much of that gas as we can without really inhibiting our ability to shape it. So we're going to use our fingers very gently, and we're not trying to lance anything. We're not trying to degas. We're not trying to do anything like that. We're just trying to spread this dough out. Right, so we get sort of like a vague rectangle. From here, we want to take advantage of the dough's natural stickiness. We want to pull it forward a little bit, and then we want to tuck that seam. We're going to want to push down, use your fingers there, sort of push that down, make sure that's nice and tucked, and then we're going to roll that forward towards ourselves, making sure that we tension it as we go, keeping that seam nice and well tucked. Then when we get to this stage right here, we've got this lip just underneath. We just want to tighten that and fold her over. Flip it around, give it a little tighten up on the other side, get those kind of ends tucked in there as well, and there we go. That's shaped. So the two things that I want you to keep in mind with shaping are surface tension and the seam. We always want the seam to be on the bottom, and we always want to try and increase surface tension on the top so it's nice and taut and not covered in wrinkles. The tighter the top is, the better it's going to spring and the better it's going to ferment during the proving stage. Cool, now that we've got that shaped, this is just a little quarter sheet pan. This is actually going to be what we bake it on later. Just going to lift that one up, just plop it right on the middle. Just sort of like, I like to, any flour that's like left on the bench, just get it on like the blade of your hands like that. The blade, heel, I don't know what you call that. Just sort of, just tuck it a little bit more to make it just like a little bit more tubular. Tubular is good, we want tubular. Yeah, there we have it. That is a shaped Pane Di Casa in the form of like a Vienna or a batard. This is gonna take about an hour to prove up. In the meantime, we're gonna get our oven preheated and ready for steam baking. To set up our oven for hearth baking, we're gonna take our baking steel or baking stone. I personally use a rock baking steel, and we're gonna put it on a middle tray and we're gonna preheat the oven to about 250. While we also do that, we're gonna put a cast iron skillet on the rack below it that's gonna preheat alongside it that we're gonna dump some boiling water into to create some steam. So it's been just over an hour and our Pane Di Casa is ready to go in the oven. When it comes to something like this, the more artisanally sort of stuff, you're not generally looking for doubling in size in the proving window. You're sort of looking for 1.5 times its size, maybe like a little bit over that. As you can see, it's nice and sort of puffy, but if I poke down on it, it's gonna leave a little indent that's slowly gonna spring back, right? That's one of the benchmarks for testing if it's proved. The other is unfortunately just experience. You kind of just need to make a few of them and then you know. Roughly, I know a no-knead bread or a Pane Di Casa or something like this is gonna take about an hour. So I start checking it about an hour, I give it a little bit longer if it needs it. So we're gonna do a couple things with this before we put it in the oven. The first thing that we're gonna do is we're just gonna take some, this is just regular all-purpose flour. We're just gonna dust that on the top. And we're just gonna sort of smooth it down very gently with our fingers. This is gonna do a couple things. We're about to score the loaf, so it's gonna stop the knife from dragging, and it's also gonna look really cool. So the next thing, scoring. This here is just a regular steak knife. This isn't a lame, this isn't anything, a lame, whatever you wanna call it. This isn't anything fancy, we're just gonna use a regular steak knife. And we're gonna think about how we're gonna cut this. I think we're gonna do 4 cuts. I think we're gonna do 4 cuts. We're gonna start in one corner, sort of think of it as a corner right up here. So that would be like the top right corner. And we're gonna pull that down to about the middle, and then we're sort of just gonna repeat with about the same distance in between them. And as we do that, we're gonna turn the knife very slightly on an angle. So here we go. 1, So you want to be nice, quick, decisive movements. You don't want to do it really slow and drag it through. Nice, quick and decisive. So there are 4 scores there. This is going to go in the oven now. So this Pane Di Casa is getting placed directly onto a baking stone, and then I'm going to drape a tea towel over my oven door to protect it and pour about a cup of boiling water into that preheated skillet. After I remove the towel and close the door, I'm going to wait 30 seconds before I open the door and spray the back and the walls of the oven with water. I'm going to repeat this process 2 more times before I reduce the temperature down from 250 degrees to about 230. Then I'm going to let it bake for about 12 minutes before I reduce the oven temperature down to about 200 and let it bake for another 12. Ooh! So you can see it's really nice here. You see where it's kind of pushed itself right up. It's gone really high and tall. That's a sign of really good gluten development, that is. It's got a lovely, lovely golden crust. Sounds nice and hollow when you thump it. Pane Di Casa is such a lovely entry point for like artisanal bread. You know, you don't need any equipment. All you really need is like just a bowl and the ingredients. If you make anything from this series, give this one a try just to see how lovely homemade bread can be. You know, I guarantee you it'll make you want to explore it further. Now, it's really important to let this cool on like a wire rack or something. If you leave this on the tray or you let it cool on a bench or something like flat and whatever, it's going to steam up and it's going to really ruin the texture. It's also really important, do not cut into this until it's fully cool. I know it's really tempting and it smells really good, but don't cut into this until it's fully cooled. You will ruin the texture and it will just be a mess. You just get so much beautiful flavor from that long ferment. It's one of those things that really reminds you how good commercial yeast can be when you treat it with a little bit of love and respect. Delicious. Okay, so for our second Pane Di Casa, we're going to add a few more different flavors by blending some different flours. Here I've got some rye flour and some wholemeal flour that I'm going to blend in with our bread flour. So it's about 60% bread flour, 20% rye flour, and 20% wholemeal flour. Another added little trick that I got from a baker that I used to work with is that instead of using water, we're going to use beer. He described beer as being like bread's looser cousin anyway. So the procedure for mixing this is the exact same as the first Pane Di Casa. We're going to throw everything in a container, we're going to saturate it, we're going to mix it all up, and then we're going to close the lid and we're going to forget about it for about 16 hours. I like this video. I feel like I'm time traveling. It's the different shows. How good do I look in my life? One of the really interesting quirks about rye flour is that it doesn't really develop gluten the same way that regular flour does. If we were using more than like 40% rye flour, I would say that we need to adjust the recipe a bit more, but at 20%, we're going to be fine. There's going to be more than enough strength in both the white and the wholemeal to develop enough gluten for this recipe. Okay, so we've got our like rye, wholemeal, beer Pane Di Casa here. Oh, it smells so good. Oh, call me a freak if you want, but like that beery, alcohol-y, oh my God, I love it so much. So we're gonna follow the exact same process for the first one when it comes to pre-shaping. So we're gonna get a little bit of flour on the dough, a little bit of flour on the bench. This dough is gonna feel a little bit different. It's gonna feel like a little bit different to the plain white Pane Di Casa, and that's that rye. We're just gonna pull that out, push that up. Exact same process as pre-shaping the last one. Get it flipped over. There we are. Nice little ball. There we are. Give that 15 minutes and we'll be back to shape it. Okay, so our mixed flour and beer Pane Di Casa has been resting for about 15 minutes and it's time to shape it. We're gonna shape this one a little bit differently because we're gonna be baking this one in a Dutch oven. We've already got this in a nice, lovely round shape. So all we're gonna do is repeat the process of pre-shaping it again. Just gonna flip her over, right? It's a little bit sticky, that's fine. It's not gonna be sticky on the underside, remember, because it's only the bit that's been pressed into the bench that's gonna be sticky. We're gonna take this top bit, gonna pull it over. We're gonna repeat it all the way around, flip her over. And now that she's on the bench and she's on again, she's standing a little bit taller than she did before. A little bit of flour on just the edges of our hands, just like the blades of your hands, I call them. I don't know if that's what they are, but that's what I call them. I'm just gonna get in there and we're just gonna pass it around until that surface tension on the top gets nice and tight. And she's round and not, you don't want to hold it too much. The more that you handle it, the more difficult it's going to be to handle. Dough like this can sense fear. You want to get in, you want to do as few movements as possible, and you want to do them as confidently as possible. The longer that you spend touching it and fooling around and trying to like tweak and tweeze it into the perfect shape, the harder it's going to be and the more that it's going to fight you. That there is perfectly tight enough. That's going to make a really beautiful cob or boule, whichever way you want to call it. I'm just going to put this on a plate with some baking paper because I don't have anything else to put it on right now. There we go. And that's gonna proof up for about an hour. During that time, we're gonna preheat our Dutch oven. We're gonna get that nice and hot at about 250 degrees. Then we're gonna pull the Dutch oven out, score our loaf, drop it in, and we're gonna bake it. So we're gonna bake this in a Dutch oven because instead of adding steam externally through pouring water into the cast iron and giving it like a great big burst of steam as we go in, we wanna heat this up to act as a sealed environment, right? So the water in the dough, that's gonna evaporate, and the lid here is gonna keep that trapped in there, and it's gonna keep that crust nice and gelatinous so it can spring as much as it can. So this needs to go into the oven as it preheats. Okay, so it's been a little bit over an hour. Our rye is nice and proved up and poofy. Our Dutch oven's very hot. What we're gonna do now is we're gonna dust this and we're gonna score it. But instead of using a steak knife, this time I'm gonna use this, which is my bread lame, or bread lung, however you wanna pronounce it. This is basically just a stick with a razor blade on it that's very slightly curved. It's curved at such an angle that really benefits oven spring and it really gives us a really pronounced expansion. This is not essential. My mother and my brother actually bought me this one when I won a competition earlier this year. Bradley's Bakehouse 2024 is engraved on there, which is a very touching and a very thoughtful gift. But we are gonna do the same thing again. So we are gonna dust this loaf with flour. Just a tiny bit. Again, it's gonna stop the blade from dragging. With a boule or a cob, I like to give them what was taught to me as a top hat score. Basically, we're just gonna cut out a square in the middle that's gonna rise upwards. If you're doing like a stuffed cob loaf, it's very good. It gives you a nice point of where to cut off so you can start like hollowing out. I personally, when it comes to boules and stuff like that, I just think it's the most handsome way to do it. So that's what I'm gonna do. So I'm gonna make 4 very quick, decisive cuts. 1, 2, 3, and 4. Perfect. Now I'm gonna very carefully pull my Dutch oven out of the actual oven. I'm gonna put it here, I'm gonna plop this in, seal it up, and get it in. So that's in the oven. That's gonna go for about 15 minutes before we take it out, pull the lid off, and then finish baking it. We haven't touched the temperature, so we're still rocking at 250 degrees. Cool. Okay, so it's been about 15 minutes. We're gonna pull our Dutch oven out, we're gonna take the lid off, and we're gonna put this back in the oven, reducing the temperature to about 220 to finish browning. I made a sourdough a little while ago using Aether's peanut butter stout instead of water. And like, I knew that was gonna go well, but I didn't think it was gonna go as well as it did. So making these kind of like beer breads has kind of become a little pet hobby of mine. Okay, so it's been about half an hour baking with the lid off. We're gonna pull our bread out and see how it looks. Have a look at that. Just wanna really carefully pick up the paper. Just lift it out, just put it on a cooling rack. Let's get this out of the way because this is a billion degrees. It smells like when you're at like a brewery or like a pub that also does like really nice pizza. Hear that crackle? Oh. Our mixed flour lager Pane Di Casa is cooled and ready to be sliced. Listen. Oh. Oh, have a look at that. As for how it tastes, it's a little bit Vegemite-y. Like it's kind of, some people will love it, some people will hate it. But if you're after that kind of super fermented, like really old school bread taste, nothing's gonna quite scratch the itch like this. So we've got the exact same dough here that we made for the plain Pane Di Casa. Again, if you want the super accurate measurements, just check down in the description below. We've got a couple extra steps with this one. So we're gonna have to divide it in 2 because we're making 2 separate little filled Pane Di Casa sort of like roll things. And we've also got to laminate it because we're gonna put some fillings in there. So I'm just gonna sprinkle it with some flour again. Now, I'm a real nerd when it comes to dividing dough up. I have worked in too many places where I have to do it day to day, where we wanna be accurate and they scare you about the consequences for not being accurate. So I'm going to get this dough out, I'm gonna get it booled, and then I'm gonna weigh it, and then I'm gonna cut it in half and get it as close to exactly half as I can using a scale. So, got our dough here. We're just gonna punch that down, exact same way that we did the first time. Sort of twisting it towards the middle. Cool, cool, cool. There we go. Put this on here. So it's about 650 grams, right? So what's that in half? Oh shit. 325 is what we're shooting for. 325, 322. I can live with that, and you kind of have to. So now we're gonna do the process of laminating, which is basically just a really fancy word for spreading some stuff out, filling it, and then rolling it back up. Spreading it out to get ready to load it up. We just wanna spread it a little bit thinner. We are not being as delicate with the air bubbles because it's still got a bench rest, so let's keep that in mind. We just want to get that nice and open like that. Nice and rectangular. We'll do both at the same time. I'll move this one so you can see me do it again. Cool. Just remember, just using the fingertips, not being super rough, but we don't need to be mad gentle either. Divine. There we go. So the first one that I've got here, I'm just gonna sprinkle some of these black olives that I've strained just over the top. We don't want too many. We don't want to like really overstuff this. I can already tell that this is gonna be too many. I'm just gonna sort of fill that one up. This one's for me. That's probably about enough. Now, the actual laminating process is pretty simple, pretty straightforward. I'm gonna tuck the sides in about 1/3 of the way. We call that a book fold. It's about 1/3, and then 1/3 again. Cool. Make sure that's nice and tight. I'm gonna take this top and we're just gonna roll it down. There we go. There's a nice short little fatty. Can work a little bit with that seam, but remember we're gonna push it out to its full length in about 15 minutes after it bench rests. So there's one. Olive Pane Di Casa is really like a classic thing. We have a lot of them around in Australia. It's really popular. You get to feel like a Greek philosopher while you eat it, because you're just eating bread and olives in a really fancy way. Now for our second one here, I've just got, this is just a block of Parmesan, and this is a box grater. You can tell where this is going. We're just gonna grate some Parmesan straight onto it. Not a super huge amount, just enough. Just enough. There we go, I'd probably call it on that much. And the exact same process as before, make sure she's pretty square. Fold in from one side, about 1/3 of the way in, fold in from the other 1/3, make sure that seam's pretty tight. Take it from the top, and then just roll it towards yourself. Keep those ends tucked if you want, but remember the overall shape doesn't matter right now, so long as it's kind of tight. We are gonna elongate these a little bit more later after they've rested for a little bit, and I've wiped some of this fucking cheese off the bench. So we're just gonna bench rest these now for about 15 minutes, and then we're gonna come back and we're gonna sort of finesse them into like a little bit more of a appropriate shape. Okay, so it's been 15 minutes and our filled Pane Di Casas are ready to get shaped. That's olive? Yeah, that's olive. I forgot, I haven't forgotten which one's which. So I'm just gonna hit these with a tiny bit of flour. Now we're not gonna do anything like we did last time, because last time involved sort of flipping them onto their belly and pushing them out and stuff like that. All we're gonna do, because we've already sort of rolled them, is we're just gonna take our thumbs and we're just gonna tighten them. We're just gonna tighten them up. And we're just gonna sort of give it the other side, just tightening that. We don't want to introduce a ton of flour because we need to have some surface tension on the actual bench for it to grab that skin and tighten it up. We're just gonna tighten those up, and I think that's gonna be a good length, that one there, right? So that's the sort of thing that we're shooting for. Make sure those ends are tucked right down the back there. There's your little man. There's your little boy right there. There's your little Pane Di Casa with some olives. So that's one. I'll show you the other one. Exact same thing again. Do you just want a little bit of flour on the top so we can touch it with our hands and not stick and rip it or anything like that? Oh no, this is the olive one. I did forget which one was which. Oh shit. Not that that matters to anyone but me. And there we have our lovely olive Pane Di Casa. So one olive, one Parmesan. We're gonna bake these on the same sheet tray, and we're gonna do the same steam baking method that we did for the big plain Pane Di Casa. We're gonna do that half baked on the baking steel with the steam. We're gonna do it that way. It's kind of the benefit of moving away from the Dutch oven method a little bit, is that you can do stuff like a little bit bigger, or maybe you wanna do a couple and you're not limited by the size of your Dutch oven. It takes a little bit of time to set up, and it definitely takes a little bit of practice, and each oven's different, but when you do get the hang of it, it is very liberating. Like you can do full-size baguettes, you can do a lovely big ciabatta, you can do all sorts of stuff. There we go, these are gonna take about an hour to prove up, and they'll be going in the oven. Okay, so our filled Pane Di Casas are ready to go. We're gonna do the exact same finishing process as last time, so a little bit of flour on top. Just gonna smooth that down with our hand very gently, very gently. And then we're gonna take our knife, and because these are a little bit shorter, we're only gonna do 3 scores instead of 4. So exact same thing again, top right-hand corner, pull it down. 3 nice little scores. Now, the reason that we do that is when this bread goes in the oven and that yeast goes crazy, it's gonna have like a little feeding frenzy. It's gonna create a ton of gas, which is gonna make the bread rise. We call that oven spring, right? Now, when that expansion happens, that gas is gonna find a place to escape, and it's usually gonna pick like the weakest part of the bread. So if we didn't score these, one of these sides of both of these loaves is gonna rip open. In creating this nice open point, we have created a weak point for the yeast. It's gonna control that rise, and it's gonna give us a lovely, beautiful, smooth finish. So these filled Pane Di Casa are going to get baked the exact same way as the full-size white one. They're going to go into a 250-degree oven on top of a baking stone. About a cup of boiling water is going to get poured into a cast iron skillet underneath, and then at 3 30-second intervals, the sides and the wall of the oven are going to get sprayed with water. And then we're going to lower the temperature down to about 200 for the remainder of the bake time. Oh my god! Oh, have a look at those, hey? Oh, they smell incredible. When I was in training, when I went to TAFE, the Pane Di Casa was like, we made a different variety of a Pane Di Casa every day. And every day we filled them with a different thing. You could fill this dough with whatever you wanted. Just like the other one, unfortunately, we are gonna have to wait until these fully cool to cut them open. So we're gonna leave these on a wire rack and we're gonna set them aside for about an hour. I think I'm gonna start with the olive. Have a look at that, hey? Olive Pane Di Casa, I don't know who came up with it, but damn, it's a hit here. Oh, it's so good. And the Parmesan. Oh good. Got away from me there, didn't it? Yeah? Get back here. Oh my yes. This is just my opinion. I don't care if you agree or not. A Parmesan Pane Di Casa makes the best grilled cheese. Make this, make one for yourself. Tell me I'm an idiot in the comments, I don't care. Parmesan Pane Di Casa, best grilled cheese you'll ever eat. Thank you so much for watching this episode of Bradley's Bakehouse. I certainly hope you got something from it. Pane Di Casa is an excellent way to dip your toe in like the long fermentation style of artisanal baking. All you really need is just a really hot oven and some patience. Subscribe if that's a thing that you feel like doing. We've got some really cool stuff coming up in the following weeks. Thanks so much for watching. Have a good one.